Yusuf Al Sanad, and yeah, guys and gals, welcome to the first edition of this live stream on my second channel, which you'll be seeing soon on YouTube. The second channel being my first name, that is Yusuf Al Sanad. And yeah, guys and gals, I started this live stream thing on my first channel, which is Mr. Gamer 990, and you can check that out if you wish. I wouldn't personally, but yeah, that's just me being, self-deprecating, if that's how you put it. But yeah, I mean, if you want to check it out, it's cool and all. But for this first edition of the live stream, I'll be talking films or cinema, as it's titled, and I really want to talk about the French New Wave, or rather the New Wave of French Extremity, which is basically a series of French horror films that take the level of violence, sexuality, or sexual content from Hollywood horror films and, makes it more extreme, hence the name French Extremity. But yeah, I mean, this genre of films, I really love it so much, especially considering how I am not a fan of, torture porn, which is a name that has been coined or given to the films like Hostel or the Saw films, and I am not a fan of either one of those series. Even the first Saw movie, I think, is so overrated and not exactly as complex or as, very deep as people make it sound to be, because there is so much wrong with that movie in terms of the plot holes, the logic, and what have you. I could nitpick that movie and destroy it to bits, but I'm not going to, because I know people still enjoy that kind of crappy film, even though I clearly don't. But in regards to the French horror films, or the French Extremity, the extreme horror films, they are the kind of horror films which are really missing nowadays, especially how, despite the extreme level of violence and gore and sexual content and what have you, those movies have a lot of heart and they have actual meaning. I mean, actual substance to them. I was talking about Hostel, right? There's one movie called Martyrs. I don't know who the director who made that film, but Martyrs, that movie is as the director. I think it's one guy, yeah. I think his name is Pascal something, but Pascal, or Monsieur Pascal, had described the film being the anti-Hostel film, in that it's about something. That movie was so dark and so fucking grim as all hell, but it's actually about something, even though I've seen it only once, because the film, it lacked a lot of moral and humanity, and it's quite nihilistic. It can be viewed as nihilistic, even though that's really its intention. It's not for the sake of itself. It's more like it's meant to really get under your skin and make you feel very uncomfortable, especially how effectively it does it. That movie is one of many films in the new wave of French Extremity which I love so much and am so fascinated by. The other two examples are Frontier by Xavier Jen and Interior, which otherwise means Inside in the English translation. And both of these movies were released in the same year, that is 2007, and both movies really did traumatize me. They did not traumatize me like, oh, my close relative has died and I'm going through this painful, traumatic experience. No, it's more like a film fan who has seen something which is just so disturbing for him or her, and they can't go through that again. It's very much how people felt when they watched Steve McQueen's 12 Years a Slave, even though I personally did not feel that way. I mean, if they do, I can understand why that is, but personally speaking, I can still watch the movie and still actually enjoy it, believe it or not, without any problem. Now, when it comes to the new wave of French Extremity, the horror films that is, from France, they can be so hard and sometimes impossible to sit through, and Frontier and Interior are no different. No, they're not. I mean, Frontier is basically, it's like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre inspired film, even though it's its own story and it has a lot more political undertones to it compared to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's about like the this group of friends, four young men and one young woman. The young woman herself, her name is Yasmin, and these are obviously like kids of Middle Eastern descent who are French citizens. I can't say that word, the C word, but yeah, they lived and grew up in France, but they just so happen to be of Middle Eastern descent. And if you guys don't know where I'm from like the Middle East, specifically the UAE, and I just so happen to speak fluent English, as some would say, and I also talk a bit of French, un peu, which means a little bit, but à l'intérieur, that movie, wow, that movie is very much a home invasion thriller, which is set in some kind of dystopian neighborhood in France. I don't know which neighborhood or district or city it is, but basically this movie, it is just so fucked up in the level of violence present throughout. But once you see the movie and once you see how things play out and the whole mystery behind it is revealed, it's quite shocking and it's quite gruesome. And another example which I want to bring up, it's actually a film which I've seen, like, God, how many years has it been? But it's basically about like this group of kids, younger kids, three boys. Think of like The Goonies or Stand By Me, except it's three kids and not like so many delinquents. They're basically exploring this place, which is a very bad thing because they soon find out that this place, it belongs to a father and son, and the son just so happens to be a mutated freak, if you want to call him that, and they cause a lot of hell for these young boys and their families. But yeah, guys and gals, that movie really, it really was disturbing, but compared to the past films, I can actually watch this multiple times. I'm looking up the directors for à l'intérieur. They are Julian Murray and Alexander Bistulo. They are the same people who made the film I mentioned, and that movie is Among the Living or Uvu Devant. It's okay, sis, it's okay. Say hi to my sis and moderator and editor, guys and gals, depending on how many people are watching. But basically I was talking about French horror films from the new wave of French Extremity, and I was just looking up right now a film called Among the Living, which is a 2009 French horror film made by the same people who made à l'intérieur, which I spoke about, sis. I think depending on how long the stream has been, a while ago, a few minutes ago, however long. But unlike most horror films, sis and guys and gals, I get disturbed by the French horror films a lot more because they get under your skin in ways that you cannot even possibly fathom, that kind of darkness and bleakness. But I mentioned that Among the Living is the kind of French horror film I can watch multiple times. When it comes to à l'intérieur, Frontier, or Martyrs, my god, Martyrs, that movie, it really just made me so fucking sad and ill inside. And in regards to like Frontier, it's basically a Texas Chainsaw Massacre inspired film. Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is more of a condensed and smaller independent art film, which just so happens to be the granddaddy of all slasher horror films. That movie was very condensed and it was basically set in the countryside, you know, with a bunch of redneck cannibalistic monsters. When it comes to Frontier, Frontier is very like politically charged and it has a lot of political undertones in regards to xenophobia, these neo-Nazi fucks who are causing nightmare and pain for this group of young kids. One of them is a young woman named Yasmin, and Yasmin was pregnant because of her boyfriend who was sadly killed, and the boyfriend's brother, who is also her ex. The brothers were with the same woman. She couldn't do anything to save her boyfriend because the cops were after them. It wasn't just because, oh, these young kids have been stealing money enough so that they could get out of the state they were in France. No, this film is inspired by an actual riot which went on years ago, I think in 2004 or 5, in which the director himself, Xavier Jen, he was so like terrified as hell, and he actually had a nightmare about what would happen if a riot did break out because of the political climate. But Yasmin herself brought this up very early on in the beginning, how like they spoke about equality and shit, but she never got anything anything like that, and you see someone like her and her friends, also her ex, having to survive at all cost against these fucking neo-Nazi scumbags, and the way Yasmin fights back, man, I mean, you feel her rage and anger and rage are basically my boyfriends or girlfriends, like the song by Leek Lee, Sadness is a Blessing, Sadness is my boyfriend, and so forth, however the lyrics of her song goes. But I love horror films which have meaning, which has good stories, and the best examples besides French horror movies is like, you know, The Shining, Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, and also I don't think this film is a horror film, but it's basically a psychological thriller which is called Straw Dogs by Sam Peckinpah. And Sam Peckinpah is known for making Western films and Western like action movies which are so graphic and violent. Right, it's so awesome. When I learned that, you know, he's one of the co-creators of The Rifleman, it was shocking because, you know, Sam Peckinpah has a very like, you know, terrible reputation when it comes to the way he treats his cast, especially the actresses who he worked with, specifically Susan George, who is the actress from Straw Dogs. But this movie, even though her character is a victim, no characters in this movie is really good. Every one of them are assholes, especially her character, because Susan George's character is basically baiting both her past lover, his name is Charlie, and David, her husband, to prove their masculinity and to show her which one of them is more masculine and manly. And I'm like, wow, fucking asshole. But yeah, I mean, that movie and so many other horror films are so great, but at the same time, so disturbing as hell. And with that being said, I loved, you know, talking about horror films with you guys and gals in this stream. And thank you so much, sis, for sending all the links and for being so awesome. I love you so much, and I love you guys and gals. It's been fun, but until next time, peace out, take care, adios, amigos, au revoir, sayonara, and please do check out their channels. And until next time, sis, see ya. Yeah, it's been fun.